Okay, so this is the Deceit of the Polygraph by me, Jeffrey Wilson. And in this, we're going to be examining the media perception of the polygraph machine. Okay, so what is the polygraph? So the polygraph was an invention of Mr. John Larson here back in 1920, who was a medical student at University of California, Berkeley, and also a member of the Berkeley Police Department when he invented this machine to try to help aid police in criminal investigations. Okay, so the polygraph portrayed in the media today. So the polygraph, interestingly enough, was first shown on film in a movie in 1926, and it's still very prevalent in media today. So I kind of gave two examples. Basic Instinct is the one I'm going to be focusing on, but I also threw in the Maury Show just because Basic Instinct is a little dated. And Maury Show, it still goes on, and they regularly do polygraph testing. So how does the polygraph machine work? Well, supposedly it works by measuring the stress responses of a person while being interrogated. They have what they call control questions, kind of like fluff questions. So here he might ask Greg, are you wearing a blue robe today? And he'd be able to say, Greg would of course say yes, and he'd be able to take those measurements compared to some of the juicier questions that he may or may not be lying about, and compare them with the honest questions, obviously being the baseline. So the sensors in this equation are measuring things like blood pressure, heart rate, and it's looking for some fluctuations when the person's blue line as compared to when we know that person's telling the truth. So there's kind of two basic flaws in the entire logic on which the polygraph is supposed to work. And that is that it assumes that everyone experiences these stress responses when they're lying, and it assumes that these stress responses are kind of manifest in the thing that it's measuring: heart rate, blood pressure, perspiration, that sort of thing. And neither of those is true. What's actually true is that there's no evidence that proves a relationship between any of those things that the polygraph is measuring and a person being deceitful. There's just no evidence. What does trigger those physiological responses, though, are things like increased cognitive load, loud noises, and just fear of being labeled deceptive by something like a polygraph machine. You know, just the stress of possibly being strapped into something like that. So what's the polygraph actually good for? In actual function, not very much. It's a good indicator, I guess, when people, whether or not a person is nervous, as to what they're nervous about, still is undefined by the machine itself. But interestingly enough, its perception can kind of become its reality. So the fact that the polygraph has the reputation for being this infallible truth, truth serum of sorts, it makes people much more likely to confess when confronted with with the alternative of being outed by a polygraph machine. So we're going to circle back to our media example. This is Catherine Trammell, who we see in this movie, Basic Instinct, brutally murder her lover. And when the police bring her in for questioning, she actually volunteers to take a polygraph test, which she passes. Now, how is that possible? Well, Catherine Trammell, she's, cool, calm, collected, cold-blooded killer, and she lies very easily, and I guess it does not trigger any sort of physiological response that they would be looking for. You can see in this picture, this is her strapped into the polygraph machine. So that brings it into the question, well, where does the polygraph fit into the legal system? And the U.S. legal system doesn't account for very much. It's really, under very few circumstances, is it actually admissible as any sort of evidence. And in some states, it's not admissible in any legal instance or employment scenario whatsoever. So the repercussions, what if the polygraph is wrong? And we circle back to this Maury example. This guy, I guess his name is Jason, and the lie detector supposedly disproved Jason cheated on Heather with a drag queen. as funny as that may be, what if this thing is wrong? Jason's relationship with Heather is probably ruined. His family is probably watching this. It's hard to come back from, just the perception of, your community that you're this person. So I guess we should all probably take polygraph tests and results very lightly. Um, Pretty much a pseudoscience. Uh, And I guess that'll conclude my presentation. I'm gonna drop it there. So thank you and have a nice day. Okay.